I have a 2005 Renault Traffic, and I was getting a fault with the red check engine light that just went out, and the stoplight would give a little flash very randomly and very intermittently. It's my own personal van, and it's been happening over the last 3 to 4 weeks. But recently, there in the last few days, what I've noticed is when the two lights flash, my temperature gauge be reading normal, and when the lights would flash, the gauge would go, all the bars would illuminate, going right to the top, the temperature gauge. So in my head, I was thinking coolant temperature sensor circuit. So first of all, I got the scan tool out, and I had no code to do with coolant temperature sensor. I did have two codes in the system. One was airflow sensor, and the other was EGR valve. But in my head, I didn't think they would have anything. Yes, one of them may turn on a light, but I didn't think they'd have any relationship with the gauge going right up to the top. So I kind of ignored the scan tool data, and I went straight for the coolant temperature sensor circuit with the scope. And there's my little interpretation of the setup of a coolant temperature sensor circuit. So coolant temperature sensor down here, computer, and two wires. So the computer sends 5 volts to a fixed resistor, through a fixed resistor inside the computer. Then it comes down to the coolant temperature sensor, through the coolant temperature sensor, and back to ground. Now the coolant temperature sensor changes its resistance with temperature. So cold engine, high resistance, high voltage. Hot engine, low resistance, low voltage. And that is what the computer is looking at, the voltage on this wire. So this coolant temperature sensor will change its resistance, which will change the voltage on this wire. So I believe I have an intermittent short to ground on this side of the circuit, from here to here. So I probed in here with my scope while the sensor was connected, and I think I had around 1 volt. The engine was kind of warm, and I looked at the wires, and I pulled at the loom, done the wiggle test, and at no stage did I see the voltage drop, but it's very intermittent. The light would just flash for a split second and then off again. No effect of the drivability of the car or anything. So I couldn't get that to drop to 0, which I was thinking was happening in my head. Disconnect the sensor, and I had 5 volts, which I should have. But again, the fault, I couldn't get the fault to come into it. So what I was thinking of then is, just so my theory is right, I was saying, will I give this, I'm still plugged in here now with my wire, will I give this a ground just to make sure that it'll bring on the 2 lights and send the gauge sky high, just to make sure that I can recreate this fault myself by giving this a ground. It'll bring on the 3 lights that, well, the 2 lights plus the gauge going sky high. And also, when the computer is looking at the voltage here, I just drew in a voltmeter, but there's 2 numbers the computer should never see on this wire. One is 5, because that would be an open circuit anywhere in the wires. or the other one is 0, because that would be a short to ground. And 0 is what I think the computer is seeing, which is bringing on my lights. Because it's only coming on for that split second, I don't believe it's staying there long enough to log a code, but that's what's happening. So I have the wire here, it's going out into the coolant temperature sensor right there on this side of it, and it's coming out to here, and I'm going to give that a ground, and I'm going to look at my clocks just to show, just to see, will the same thing happen? Can I get the 2 lights and the gauge all at the same time to do what was happening on the drive cycle? But there kind of was, there the gauge went up sky high and the lights came on and the gauge. So that's just me going in here, grounding that with my test light that's connected to ground. So that would happen, me just again doing that. So I'm happy that I'm on the right track with this, and the fact that I've gone in here with my scope and I didn't see at any point doing the wiggle test or moving the wire could I get my scope to go 0. So what I've done is I made the call. I reckon it's getting short. Pull the ground here in the inside in the coolant temperature sensor itself. So I've made the call. I have a new coolant temperature sensor here now, and that's what's going into this fan now. I believe this is going to fix this very, very intermittent problem, and if it does, great. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But if it does not fix, if I still have this issue, I will do a part 2 to this video, and we'll go after it again. But I think that's what that's what's wrong with this fan, the coolant temperature sensor. And that's it. I just thought it was interesting. Interesting point there was me copping that the temperature gauge went up sky high, because if I didn't see that, and I didn't see that for the longest time, I just saw the 2 lights flashing. If I didn't cop that the temperature gauge was going up sky high when the lights came on, and the fact that I had no codes for coolant temperature sensor, I probably would have went chasing down the 2 codes that were stored in the system, which would have been the airflow and the EGR valve. So that was kind of important information for me to see that the gauge, the temperature gauge, was going up to the roof. So I made the call to ignore the scan tool codes that I have. They are codes and they are faults, but not the fault that I'm seeing here with my clocks. So that's it, yeah. Hope this is interesting. I thought it was an interesting one, and yeah, hopefully it'll help someone out, and there will be a part 2 if we're not fixed, but fingers crossed we're fixed. So thanks for watching.